What's up? So today, everybody, we're going to be ranking all locations, or POIs, which is short for Point of Interest, in the new Fortnite Chapter 2 map. Now, I thought the most beneficial way to do this video for you guys is not look at the little locations, but mostly just focused on the named larger spots. There's a ton of tiny spots that now have names around the map that are really only good for solos and sometimes not even then, so I didn't want to focus too deep on those, but instead focus on the bread and butter that's going to be more relevant to all you watching. The named locations, and then a few unnamed that are good enough to actually make this list. Also, switched it up. I don't know if I'm gonna leave it there, but just thought we'd try it out. Unlike this, I thought I'd put something up that a lot of YouTubers don't actually have. Oh! Jokes aside, I'm probably gonna change it. I don't really like it. But anyways, deal with it for today. Anyways, please subscribe to the channel and let's get into it. All right, coming in at the lowest spot on this list at number 15, we have Holly Hedges. Straight up, there's just nothing good about Holly Hedges. Now, I will admit that this was a very tough ranking video to do, and because of that, we had to really set down some serious criteria. The main focus of how we're going to rank things on this list is loot. Now, mostly that's chests, which we actually have access to the number of all chests at each location, but also things like materials. Maybe there's a location that has a bunch of pallets, and that's really gonna make a location good too, but it can also be things like, hey, I don't know, a bunch of slurp kegs that give you a free shield. Just how overall kitted you are going to be walking out of a place. And Holly Hedges isn't really gonna do a very good job of that. See, there's only 14 chests at Holly Hedges, and by comparison, the place with the most has 34. Now, you might be sitting here saying, oh, well, Patrick, in solos, it's actually very good for looting if you're the only one there. 14 chests is fine by me. Yeah, you know what else is great for looting if you're by yourself? The place with 34 chests. Just accept the fact that Holly Hedges is trash. It's got 14 chests, nothing special in terms of farming, and no slurp kegs. On top of that, there is no boat next to it because there is no river next to it. On top of that, it's far away from the center of the map, and by proxy going to often be a long run to get to that circle. And actually, as a side note, that's going to be our other main contender of how we're going to rank things. Because over time, in many instances, the further away a location is from the center of the map, the more often you're going to have to be running a far distance to get to that circle. And Holly Hedges really just doesn't do that great either. Moving on to number 14, we actually have an unnamed location, and this is Camp Cod. So Camp Cod has a total of 17 chests, just slightly topping out Holly Hedges, and that's really, I think, the only reason it's better. The Camp Cod is the unnamed island down at the southeast portion of the map, and it's really not too bad. It is one of the most out-of-the-way POIs in the entire game, which is quite annoying, and that definitely makes this place not so great. If it was in the middle of the map, it'd be top 10 for sure, but it is just so far away. Now, it's right next to a river with boats, so this makes getting to the circle not so bad, but there really is only one way out of this area between mountains, and that makes it dangerous. Yeah, that's another thing you sometimes have to consider. If the only way out of a place is a river, I mean, that's quite dangerous. That's ultimate low ground. So overall, not great. Not awesome on chests, decent on mats, and just really far away from everything. That said, though, I did think it was good enough to make this list as an unnamed POI. Moving on to number 13, we have Weeping Woods. Now, I'm gonna say this again. Weeping Woods is also trash. There are 11 chests in the main portion of Weeping Woods, which is the least of any named POI in the game. Now, one thing that makes up for Weeping Woods is the fact that there's a lot of trees here. It's pretty easy to get 999 mats, which I do appreciate. But the other thing is that it's actually got pretty good location. It's not totally central, but it is fairly central. And in the game as it currently stands, where mobility is so limited, I actually think that that is a huge deciding factor on where you should land or not. And if a location is not central, it at least needs to have a boat or some other form of mobility to get you out of there, which Weeping Woods has. So it's really, again, a bad spot, but the combination of both wood and better location make up for the fact of the lack of chests. Moving on to number 12, we've got Salty Springs. Okay, so Salty Springs is also trash. 12 chests. It's got 12 chests. Now, it is a great central location. It's one of the most central locations in the entire game. And honestly, you're never going to have to go far to the storm. However, it's got 12 chests. On top of that, there is very little to gather for mats here. I mean, there are cars, so decent for metal and, you know, kind of your average wood. Basically, any place I feel like is really average for wood unless it's got tons of pallets or trees. It's just not a great spot. The only thing that I think really makes up for Salty Springs is just its location. All these places really don't have enough loot for an entire squad to drop here, which is a part of the consideration, but at least Salty Springs has location. Moving on to number 11, you hate to see it. It's Pleasant Park. Pleasant Park was probably my #1 favorite spot of chapter 1 of Fortnite. I loved it. And now I kind of hate it. So Pleasant Park has got 16 chests, which makes it a little bit better than the last few spots. I mean, apart from Camp Cod. But the thing that Pleasant Park has over Camp Cod is that it's at least a little bit more central. Pleasant Park certainly isn't a central location, but it's kind of starting to ride on the edge of like the border of the center. So you're gonna have some bad runs, but they're not gonna be the worst runs of all time. Again, there's a pretty average amount of material gathering opportunities here. So overall, it's, again, not good. It's getting better, but still bad. Now coming in at number 10, guys, we actually have Risky Reels. Risky Reels is another unnamed location just next to Frenzy Farm, and I would say one of, I mean, if you're considering every single POI, the best in the game. So 13 chests, not overly ideal. As a squad, each person gets 3 chests. Few loot drops, that's probably not gonna be enough to gear up. Which again, I can see the comments now, well, I like to drop here in solos. Listen, that's fine, but any place has enough loot for a single player. So it's not really a fair argument. Once you get into duos with Risky, you're gonna start to struggle for loot, and squads is gonna be a bit of a nightmare. However, this is one of the best locations in the game for metal, which given such little advantages you can get in the game as there's just no items or anything like that, metal can actually be a pretty useful thing. There's a lot more AR fort fighting than there used to be, and with that, metal is useful. On top of that, Risky has great location. I mean, it's like smack dab in the center of the map. You're most likely not going to have to run very far. So while it is a little bit scarce for loot, I think it does everything else really well, and for that reason, deserving of the top 10. Moving on to number 9, we have Steamy Stacks. So the first spot on our list to break the 20 threshold for chests at a total of 23. Now, as far as material gathering goes, it's not the greatest, but there are some wood pallets around to kind of try to make up for that. Steamy Stacks, though, was really the first spot on the list that's a serious squad drop consideration, I would say. I mean, I know a lot of people like to drop Pleasant, but it's really not sustainable for squads. But getting back to Steamy, the biggest issue with this place is its location. Pretty much tied with Camp Cod, it is the furthest location from the center of the map, and that sucks. If you ever had a game that ends in the southwest of the map by like Slurpy Swamps and you started here, it sucks. You know, I mean, it's easy to say like, I'll just get a boat, but you know, sometimes boats don't work out for you. You're very vulnerable in an open boat with low ground, and on top of that, again, sometimes you just don't get one. Maybe there was another squad here that left, or you know, whatever. Now, there are 2 things that do add some mobility here. You've got the zip lines, which if you get a southeastern circle, that's gonna save you a lot, and you've also got the smokestacks themselves, which in theory sound great, but really don't get you very far. So overall, I would say that Steamy Stacks is a decent spot for resources, but the location really takes away from it. Now coming in at number 8, we've got Retail Row as the highest ranked original location. So I would say that Retail Row is pretty dang similar to Pleasant Park. A seemingly similar number of buildings, material gathering opportunities. It's pretty average. But Retail Row has a total of 20 chests, which, for may not sound like a lot, can make the difference. And on top of that, unlike Pleasant Park, Retail Row is next to a really big area, Lazy Lake. There's actually a lot of circle placements that allow you to rotate from Retail Row over to Lazy Lake, or even up to Dirty Docks. Whereas Pleasant, on the other hand, location isn't great because the only big spot next to it is Sweaty Sands, which 9 times out of 10, you're going to be moving away from the circle. And to me, that's enough to make Retail Row actually quite higher than its counterpart, Pleasant Park. Moving on to our number 7 spot, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Frenzy Farm. So I feel like Epic has finally learned from the mistakes of Anarchy Acres and Fatal Fields, not Fatal Farm. Who would ever say that? I think they've really learned from the mistakes of these old locations, and they really beefed this spot up for loot. Instead of a simple farmhouse, they went big PP baller, and it's got a lot of loot. In terms of area that it covers, it's one of the biggest buildings in the game, and with that comes a lot of loot. 21 chests in all, along with some decent opportunities for farming and peripheral areas around it for more loot as well. But it's also in a really good spot. You're never gonna have to run too far from Frenzy Farm, but the big issue, and it kind of works against itself, is that you're very vulnerable. I mean, if you look at Frenzy Farm, it's literally just surrounded by areas. So you're gonna have a tough time fighting enemies, but that wasn't something I really wanted to consider all that much. I would rather fight enemies than have to be running in the storm for an hour. It's just more fun. So yeah. Overall, Frenzy Farm is pretty good, but not great. Moving on to our number 6 spot, we have Craggy Cliffs. And this might be a bit of a surprise, as you've heard me complain about locations that are far from the center of the map, so hear me out. 19 chests. Overall, kind of in line with everything that we're at right now. As far as materials go, it's again pretty average. But the thing that really makes this place shine is it's got a huge supply of slurp kegs. Slurp kegs are a game changer. You'll see later on this list. They are a game changer. And any location that even has some slurp kegs gets a huge bonus, and this is one of them. Now, it is really far from everything, unfortunately, which kind of sucks, but at least it has a very close river to get you through. You can grab a boat and make way to the central area of the map fairly easily, I would say, but that location still does suck. Now, topping out a number 5 spot, we have Dirty Docks. So we are really taking a huge jump here, up to 31 chests at this location. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize this, but Dirty Docks, as far as chests go, has the 2nd most in the entire game. So as far as that kind of loot goes, good, but material gathering isn't great. A lot of cars, great for metal. Not a lot of wood other than some pallets lying around, which I don't love. But the other big issue with this spot is, again, location. See, Craggy Cliffs has boats right next to it, but at Dirty Docks, you kind of have to travel a bit just to get to a boat, and not in the way that's really going to lead you to a west side storm or west side circle. Despite having amazing loot, I find myself 9 times out of 10 having long runs from Dirty Docks, and that is enough to keep it down at number 5. Now, at number 4, we've got Misty Meadows. All right, so Misty Meadows is a spot that is really just everything done well. Nothing great, everything well. 25 chests is more than enough for you and your squad. Easy. And on top of that, you've got a ton of fishing opportunities just next to you. And really pretty average mats, but nothing to take away from it. It's got decent location, but more importantly is right next to a lake. So, you can take a boat and head to wherever you're going very easily. And as a bonus, it's really safe. It's very hard to challenge people at Misty Meadows from the lake because you have to swim to them. So you have that whole side of you very protected, which again, I didn't want to be a huge determining factor for this list, but if there's a huge bonus like that, I mean, you gotta consider it. Moving on to number 3, it's Lazy Lake. So considered to a lot of people to be the best spot in the game, I can see where those people are coming from, but those people are wrong. 28 chests in total, the 3rd most chests in the game. I think that's probably why people like this spot so much, thinking it's the most chests. 28 chests, that's awesome, that's amazing. It's got good loot. Actually, I might even say, I would say pretty average loot. Nothing standout, but it is good. It's got similarly middle of the road location, just like Misty Meadows, but also has a boat and a river next to it. It's definitely a dangerous spot like Tilted used to be, as you've got 2 locations kind of pressing you on each side and maybe people coming up from behind you. So that's something you should look out for, but overall it is a great spot. Lazy really does nothing wrong. These next 2 places just do more better. Like our number 2 spot, Sweaty Sands. So Sweaty Sands has got to be an easy top 2 when we're talking this new map. Compared to Lazy Lake, it's got a very similar location with less risk, as there's not a lot of people pushing on you from other sides. It's got a pretty similar river style you can take with a boat, and material gathering is also, again, quite similar. But where Sweaty Sands takes it is chests. At 34, the most amount of chests to spawn, not only in this new map, but in any location ever. I'm getting emotional. No, I'm just kidding. That's really the thing that makes Sweaty Sands stand out. It's just got so much gosh dang loot. You've got the little buildings on the side, the big tilted Paradise Palm style building. You've got the docks, you've got the beach. There's just so much loot here. And on top of that, it doesn't even really have that bad a location, plus is safe. If our number one spot didn't exist, Sweaty Sands would easily take the cake, as it's really just got it all. Now, before we do get down to our number one spots, just a few honorable mentions. A lot of people mentioned Island, which has 9 chests, and I really didn't think that was enough to consider it as a major POI. Very central, which is great, but again, just not enough loot. The Orchard is a place that I almost considered, and if you haven't gone there, it's actually really good for solos and duos. 11 chests just north of Frenzy Farm, but again, the issue is just that it's really not a squad's location. And that was really my criteria for this video. If you can't land there as a squad, it's not really considered to be a major POI. And then the last one is Log Jam Woodworks. Honestly, this place is so awesome to land in solos and rotate in duos and squads that I don't really want to tell any of you about it. Let's move on. Coming in at our number one spot, ladies and gentlemen, you all knew what it was. You voted for it on Twitter. It is Slurpy Swamps. Okay, Slurpy Swamps. What makes Slurpy Swamps so great? It's only got 18 chests, which, if you kind of follow this list, would really put it at like number 11 or 12. Location, it's kind of average. You've got an easy out with the boat and the river just next to it. But obviously, there's one thing that makes this place OP. That would be slurp kegs, slurp trucks, slurp sewers, slurp juice. Okay, when you have a location that you are guaranteed, no matter how many people you fight, no matter what, to walk out with full health, if there's no other places like that, this spot wins. And as far as Slurpy Swamps go, this is the only location where that applies. Think of like a Dusty Depot, right? That was a spot that you'd land at, have trash loot, and always walk out with like 50 HP just to go and die. Slurpy Swamp has got better loot than Dusty, obviously, but the thing that makes it so good is no matter how many fights you go through, if you are the last squad alive there, you walk out with full health. On top of that, you're probably gonna have like 200 to 500 metal, which is huge. On top of that, if you walk outside of this place, there's tons of trees and logjam woodworks, which I really don't want to keep talking about. It's just a phenomenal area. It's pretty safe too. You're never really gonna get third party here either, just because it is a little bit out of the way. And with that river, it honestly, I think it might be the best place to ever exist in Fortnite. You really can't beat free health. And ladies and gentlemen, that is our list. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way through this one. If you could please subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. My name is Patrick Smith. I make YouTube videos.
What did he just say?
Never really say that for my outros. Have a great day.
Check the prompter.
The prompt is fine.
Read the copy, please. The copy's good. Just read it.